Subordinates, underlings, minions. Bond villains always seem to have these. However, there is another type of employee on the payroll. Let's take a look at some henchmen and henchwomen from the Bond franchise. What is a henchman? There are lots of characters who follow orders and get in our hero's way, but I'm not including all of them in my list. Let's look at the films and see if we can develop some criteria for identifying henchmen. The first candidate is Morzeni in From Russia with Love. He trains personnel for Spectre, such as Donald Red Grant, played by Robert Shaw. What makes him a henchman? Number 1 calls Morzeni into his office to dispatch Spectre number 5, Kronstein, played by Vladek Shebal, with a well-aimed shoe dagger to the shin. Poisoned, of course. Bond never interacts with him, but I think that this is our first look at a henchman. He takes orders directly from the main villain, is a physical threat, and kills someone. These can be our first criteria. It could be argued that Grant is a henchman as well, but he would be one to Spectre number 3, Rosa Klebb. Goldfinger presents us with possibly the second most iconic henchman, although some will rank him first. I'm talking about Odd Job, played by Harold Sakata, the sturdy muscle of Auric Goldfinger, who is deft at assassination with his iconic bowler hat, razor-edged brim naturally. He doesn't really speak in the film, uttering "aha" or "ah" a few times. He meets the criteria we've established so far, possibly adding one more. Henchmen don't have to be conversationalists. Counting the shoe dagger, we have 2 henchmen with gimmicks. This can be another criteria. Henchmen employ some kind of gimmick, like special clothing, that they can use in the line of work. They might be physical attributes that help identify them, too. Henchmen are memorable. Additionally, true henchmen are named. Thunderball was a little tough. Fiona Volpe, played by Luciana Paluzzi. Fiona Volpe is in the henchwoman category along with Femme Fatale. Blofeld makes his first official on-screen appearance in You Only Live Twice, and there is Hans, who Bond has to go toe-to-toe with towards the end of the film after Blofeld has fled the scene. Hans winds up as fish food. The first gigantic henchman in the cinematic universe, Hans was played by Ronald Rich. Our criteria seems to be holding up so far. On Her Majesty's Secret Service brought us a new Bond and a new Blofeld, but did it bring us any new henchmen or henchwomen? We have Grunther, who meets his fate at the hands of Bond's future wife, Tracy. He was played by Yuri Boryenko. The main henchwoman, though, is Irma Bunt. In the films, she never faces final judgment, but she was definitely extremely important to Blofeld and had a lasting impact on Bond's future as the one pulling the trigger during the drive-by that took the life of Bond's new wife. Bunt was played by Ilse Stepat. Diamonds Are Forever has a few candidates. We have 2 duos, one female and one male. Bambi and Thumper are the ladies, played by Lola Larson and Trina Parks. Bond gets physical with them and comes out on top. The male duo is Wint and Kidd, played over the top by Bruce Glover and Putter Smith. They survive longer than the main villain, and Bond dispatches them in equally over-the-top ways at the end of the film. Another optional criteria? The hench people sometimes outlive the villain, and Bond has to face them at the end of the film. That ends Connery's run and the lone Lazenby outing. What does Moore have in store? More henchmen, of course. In Live and Let Die, I'd say there are 3. 2 more memorable than the third. Starting with the third, there is Whisper, who gets locked in an airtight capsule used to keep heroin dry during transport. He probably doesn't make it, but you never know. He was played by Earl Jolly Brown, but with Alistair Abel giving the voice. The two more memorable ones include Tee-Hee, a maniac with a mechanical arm. Played by Julius Harris, Tee-Hee makes it to the end of the film, where Bond, after disarming him, sends him flying off a train. I suppose to meet his maker. The last henchman is Baron Samedi, played by Geoffrey Holder, who closes out the film sitting on the front of the train, laughing into the camera. Is he a henchman, though? Or a supernatural being who is just out for lols with the villain while not really backing any of his plans? If you have any thoughts on Baron Samedi as portrayed in the film, real henchman or supernatural being, let me know in the comments. I'd say Tee-Hee and Baron Samedi definitely make it into the henchman class. Named? Yes. Present throughout the film? Yes. A danger to our hero? Yes. Gimmicks? Present. They tick a lot of boxes. I would argue that the man with the golden gun doesn't have a proper henchman matching the criteria I'm using. What we get instead is Knick-Knack, who is more like a butler, chef, personal assistant, stuff like that. He sometimes hires assassins to take their chances against his boss, Scaramanga, and it seems Knick-Knack will inherit everything should one of them succeed. This little hobby appears to be sanctioned by Scaramanga. Anyway, Knick-Knack also makes it to the end of the film after his boss has been done in by Bond. Knick-Knack is played by Hervé Villechaize, but he just doesn't tick enough boxes. What do you think? In The Spy Who Loved Me, what we find is the henchman who I consider the most iconic, edging out Oddjob simply due to appearing in 2 films. Of course, I am talking about the physically imposing Jaws, the man with the metal teeth that can probably bite through anything except our hero's plot armor. Jaws is played by Richard Kiel. Jaws returns in the next film, Moonraker. According to director Lewis Gilbert, so many children had written fan letters about Jaws, asking that he be a good guy, that the character's popularity could not be ignored. To satisfy the wishes of those young fans, Jaws is more of a comedic character in this film, and switches sides with Bond at the end to help ensure the survival of the human race and his diminutive girlfriend. Yes, girlfriend. Which version of Jaws do you prefer? The terrifying menace in The Spy Who Loved Me, or the comedic anti-hero who finds love in Moonraker? Drop a comment and let me know. For Your Eyes Only has oodles of minions. Are they henchmen, though, according to the criteria I've established so far? There is Kriegler, who succumbs to defenestration. Then there is Locke, who goes over the edge of a cliff in his car with a little help from Bond. I would say Kriegler fits the mold best. Maybe Locke can fit in. But is he higher up in the food chain than a henchman? Moore's Bond brings out more henchmen. In Octopussy, we have twins, Mishka and Grishka, played by David and Anthony Meyer. Mishka has a disappointing meeting with Bond. Seriously, he is just crushed. Literally. Grishka becomes really depressed afterwards and also gives up the ghost due to stomach pain. This is the first duo we have seen since Diamonds Are Forever, isn't it? Paired henchmen seem pretty rare. We now reach Moore's final turn as Bond, A View to a Kill. I'd say we come out of this film with 2 candidates. Mayday, played by Grace Jones, who is memorable and formidable and changes sides before her final act of heroic sacrifice, and Scarpine, who goes up in flames on a blimp. Boom! Mayday is more memorable due to the charisma of the actress and amount of screen time. Plus, she is the first real person to switch sides since Jaws, so that puts her in special company. We have a new Bond. What do the Dalton films bring us? In The Living Daylights, there is quantity but not quality. There is a large number of minions who meet their ends, but none rises to that memorable status of henchman, at least for me. Do you feel the same way? Let me know. Dalton was done in 2, License to Kill being his last. Can we get more memorable henchmen when we turn from arms dealers to drug dealers? Bond is out for revenge in this one, so there are a lot of people connected to the main villain that he has to go through to satisfy his lust for blood. I suppose 2 stand out more than the rest. Ed Killifer feeds some fish with his body. The more typical henchman, though, is Dario. Evil, chatty, pretty active in the film. Dario is as disappointed at his final meeting with Bond as Mishka was. Dario is utterly crushed. Literally. Eric McGill plays Killifer, and Benicio del Toro plays Dario. I suppose true henchmen should go out in a memorable way, preferably ironic. Add that to the criteria. Here comes Brosnan's era as Bond. I would say the creators wanted to take things back to more of a Connery Moore feeling, not campy like Moore, but more fun, yet retaining the plausible physicality that Connery's Bond had. Moore was getting up there and couldn't quite pull off the fight scenes. In GoldenEye, we have Xenia Onatop, a femme fatale who likes to crush her victims between her thighs. This is a classic throwback to hench people with gimmicks. Hers is not prosthetic, and it is not based on apparel. It is built in, all natural. She is ironically crushed by a helicopter and some trees, so a slightly ironic demise for her. Xenia is played by Famke Janssen. In Tomorrow Never Dies, Götz Otto portrays Richard Stamper, a henchman who actually has proper beef with Bond since Bond killed Henry Gupta. As his name implies, this monster wants to stamp out Bond. Stamper and Bond go toe-to-toe after the main villain has been dealt with, another classic sign of a memorable henchman. Bond comes out on top, and Stamper goes boom. This might seem controversial, but in The World Is Not Enough, I would place Renard himself as the top henchman. Renard is played by Robert Carlyle. Once we learn that Electra King, played by Sophie Marceau, is the real mastermind behind everything that is happening, and Renard is helplessly in love with her and only doing her bidding, it makes him more like a henchman than a co-conspirator, to me anyway. Renard has a gimmick, a bullet in his brain that is slowly advancing and robbing him of sensation, and a memorable visage, his scarred face. He outlives the real villainess, and Bond has to defeat him in an ironic way to foil the plot. What do you think? Can I place Renard as a henchman like this? Let me know. Brosnan had one more film as Bond, Die Another Day. I'm tempted to place Miranda Frost, played by Rosamund Pike, in the henchwoman person category, as I did with Renard. But she plays other roles as well, like Bond girl, so I will leave her out. There are a couple of others who stand out more. We have the well-named Mr. Kill, kind of an odd job reference with his size and presence, as well as his use of apparel as a weapon, in this case a hairpin. He gets his brain fried in another Goldfinger callback. Someone tied down as a laser goes wild. Mr. Kill was played by Lawrence Makoare. The other standard is Zhao, a henchman with diamonds embedded in his face. Memorable indeed. Played by Rick Yoon, Zhao goes out in an almost ironic way, barely escaping from a car submerged in frigid waters beneath ice. The surfacing Zhao is crushed by a chandelier made of ice. Or is it made of diamonds? So sparkly. Now we move to our final Bond, played by Daniel Craig. Through 5 films, it is hard to find henchmen that fit my criteria. Sure, Bond takes out a lot of underlings, but they don't have much presence in the films, aside from being fodder and working for the villain. That is, until we reach Spectre. Here we encounter Mr. Hinks. Massive, cold, brutal, efficient. He has granite thumbnails that he uses to gouge out people's eyes. That is a gimmick for sure. Unfortunately, while he is big enough to give Bond a lot of trouble, he gets off a train the wrong way. Granted, his name is not mentioned in the film, but he is clearly listed in the end credits as Hinks. Hinks sure ticks a lot of boxes. In the final film of the reboot trilogy, there is one more worthy henchman. He makes several appearances throughout the movie, first in the employ of Blofeld, and later working for Safin. Can't keep a good mercenary down. That is, unless you show him a really cool watch. Bionic eye, go boom. Q must have been chuffed after Bond delivered one of the best lines in the series. Primo, played by Dali Bensala, rounds out our list. I think that is it. Those are who I felt met my criteria as henchmen and henchwomen. What do you think? Who was your favorite hench person in the Bond franchise? Did I leave anyone out that you think should be included? Do you prefer a brainy villain who has some muscle to handle the dirty work, or an all-in-one villain who doesn't need such assistance? Leave your ideas in the comments section. Thanks for watching. See you next time.